Okay. Okay, well, we will begin the Administrative Practices Committee meeting at 9:02 this morning. We're conducting it here at the district headquarters in Grass Valley and also Zooming on the Zoom. There are meeting instructions on the website and on the agenda itself. If you're wanting to make public comment on any item, you can press *9 and raise your hand, and *9 will lower your hand. Chris, just out of curiosity, how many members of the public might be on the call?
It looks like maybe 2 outside of.
Perhaps 2.
Of district, yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and open it up. Madam Chair, I'd like to adjust the agenda items to move the item number 4 into place of item number 3. Monica would like to get out up to Scotts Flat and take care of this recreation business.
I think that's fine, thank you.
All righty. So we'll open item number 1, and that is to approve the minutes of the regular meeting on June the 2nd.
I approve. Chris?
I approve.
Okay, close item number 1. Item number 2, approve the minutes of June 22nd.
Yep, I approve.
I approve.
Great. Okay, we'll move to item number 4, which is the Monica's item for the Senior Facility Ranger classification and Superintendent.
Good morning, Monica Reyes, Recreation Manager. Our recommendation is to review and discuss the elimination of the Senior Facility Ranger classification, replacing the headcount with a newly proposed Recreation Facility Superintendent, and in addition, a part-time Senior Park Ranger. It's kind of confusing. What we're doing is we're taking 2 positions that I have and making 1.5 positions. So I'm actually losing a half a position,
Okay.
which is fine. Background, with the recent retirement of our Senior Facility Ranger, or with anybody, it always opens up the opportunity to see what you miss or see what you don't miss or see what you have and you don't have. And so through the time and with district's needs and the central job functions, it's time to make a change. I need a little bit of help.
Yeah, I bet you do.
So with this new position, it will provide a higher level of technical operation and supervisory support to myself. This position will allow me to focus on the broader aspects of the recreation department other than the day-to-day. So I'm in the day-to-day a lot, and I don't get to work on my other things or I'm rushed to do things. So this will help me tremendously. The budgetary impact. Well, I don't know if you guys have if you have any questions about the job description or.
No, I don't. I think, I trust that you, I read it and I felt like this is something that you need, and I'm happy that it does not add to the budget. I'm happy that it doesn't add FTEs, but it's like, I like that you're looking and restructuring. So I was happy about that.
Thank you. And so basically, even with me eliminating.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Even with us eliminating a half a position as far as the park ranger position, right now I haven't really used that position in the last couple of years. It was kind of designed for Jackson Meadows, which is truly only a 5-month job anyways, because we're not up there during the winter months. So this new part-time park ranger position will fit right into that slot perfectly. That works great. And then it also helps, the half salary from that position helps to build the salary for the superintendent position.
So my question is, does the superintendent does he have a higher pay scale than the park ranger?
Yes.
Would have. Obviously, he's making a higher position.
I didn't get that.
So obviously, because it's a new senior position, then it would come with a salary, a different salary schedule than the park ranger, right?
Exactly. That's why I'm using the salary from the senior facility ranger, that whole salary plus half of a senior park ranger,
Yes.
to fill this new position as far as the salary is concerned.
Sounds great.
Okay. Any more questions or?
No, I think this is great. I'm pleased that you're restructuring and, figuring out. This gave you an opportunity to do that, so.
Exactly.
And you did great. You didn't add more money, though. Very good.
When would this take place?
It will probably, we're probably gonna ride out this season, just as status quo, and then once the season's over, bring the person in at the end of the season, that way they can start fresh, just learning throughout the winter, and then game on next season.
Very good.
They'll be knowed up.
Very good. So I'm fine with that. Chris, you?
I'm fine with that. Sounds good.
Thumbs up?
Okay, thank you.
Hold on, are there any other public,
Yeah, we might need some public comment
public
about
comment on this item that's out there? Star 9 to raise your hand.
No one's raising their hand.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, with that, we will bring this to a consent item at the next board meeting.
I would think so, yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Monica.
Thank you, Monica.
Thanks.
Monica?
Okay, so we'll change back and open up item number 3, which is the addition of a public information officer classification and to the adjustment to the communications specialist salary schedule. So, this is bringing this item back from the previous APC. In that month, we've looked, kind of done a little deeper dive, obviously, into the PIO position and made some adjustments downward. At the same time, we have looked at the classification in the communications family of service here at the district and identified that particular spread between the PIO perspective salary and the current communications salary, it's just that depth is a large spread, and we try to keep those top tier spreads between roughly a 20% delta between the two. And so we look at it based on budget and salary surveys that Jana and her team conduct. And we're proposing that we're bringing the PIO classification salary wage schedule down somewhat from what we presented a month ago. But we're also proposing to increase the communication specialist by a small percentage that would help close that gap. Right now, it's like a 30, if the PIO position classification schedule was to go through, that would be roughly a 37 or so, I think, percent differential. So we're proposing to bring up the communications, and it closes that gap to about 35, recognizing both budget and salary survey. We can't really close a gap so wide in such a short period of time, but this is a way to start to help minimize that gap over time. It keeps that family of communications sort of there. So,
could you outline for me, because I've never quite understood, what is our family, what does that exist of? You don't have to tell me people, but
Yeah.
positions or contract employees or whatever. Like, what do we have currently?
currently we have in the communications side,
Yeah, because you say family, so I hear multiple people.
I'm referring to two.
Okay.
So, a family of two. Right now, it's a family of one.
It's a family of one,
So we
okay.
have a communication specialist, as a full-time employee. We have a PIO, Public Information Officer, currently as a part-time, temporary contract employee. So we do not have an employee as a PIO, as a full-time equivalent employee. This is the creation of a full-time equivalent classification to be filled in the 2021 budget cycle. Okay? So the family doesn't exist yet. We're creating the family. We're creating the family here.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
The family is a single person.
That's right. But
Okay.
A slight orphan.
An orphan.
To build a job family can be just a more senior or supervisor person plus a subordinate, whether that's an analyst or a specialist, it's a very tiny job family.
right, this is a very small family.
And so, my question is for the contract that we have out, my understanding of that contract was that it came on board as a result of about the timing, and that was the purpose for that contract. Is that right? Kind of, no? Yes.
Not really. Kind of yes, but
Kind
no.
of, yes.
So,
Okay.
so as the district becomes more astute in the communication environment here locally and regionally, what we realized is that one individual was not enough to communicate the breadth and the scope of the work that NID does to the community, staying engaged with the community, telling the folks, both internally and externally, the work that we are doing. We have found over the years, NID really wasn't, in the past, before me, before
Right. All of that.
many of us,
Yes.
NID wasn't very interested or had a very large public-facing structure, right? And so it operated within itself, and it did the things that it was doing. In the last 4 or 5 years, recognizing the fact that the community changes, the perceptions change, the political environment changes, we have not kept pace with ensuring that our message is out there and ensuring an adequate, a forward-leaning, a best foot forward case and a marketing and communications plan that we can stick with and build upon and really inform the community that we're here, we've been here for 100 years. You may not know it all the time. Sometimes you may not like it, but let's communicate with the work that we actually do.
Right. I
Right.
would agree 100% with what
And-
you said, yeah.
And so although the PG&E acquisition opportunity was, this particular PIO position came into play around there, because we anticipated there'd be a very strong need for more engagement in the community public information space. But as we've put a contract, part-time employee in, all the while we're constantly thinking about better ways to communicate with the public, and sure enough, it's clear that one individual can't do both, which is our internal communications of pipeline, waterways, and website information and all of these other pieces, as well as carry forth a strategic, visionary communications, marketing, outreach plan that's putting the district's best foot forward. And so that's what this PIO position really embodies. It brings forth it's responsible, it's managing, and it's delegating on that communications plan as we create it. We do have a series of contractors that we have helping us with some of this stuff, right? But my hope is that we have an astute PIO position that can create, build, and design these activities for a communications plan that will sort of work in perpetuity and help expand our branding and activities throughout the district. I think the PG&E acquisition was just, it kind of was one of the triggers that said, hey, we need a little more help in that arena. But as we started designing that position and other strategies around public communications for the district, it really helps to have a couple people thinking about it and putting these packages together. So if that helps, and I will add that as we discuss the, I'll hold off on that. I'll wait for your questions.
Okay.
I wanted, go ahead, Chris.
I have a comment. Yes, on this subject, we've talked about it before. I'm not opposed to drafting doing this part of it. I am philosophically challenged or opposed to, or not opposed, how we quantify cost-benefit ratio of, I call it advertising or public information, and knowing whether we're getting, I'm not there to see every day what goes on. And I've always struggled in my business with how much to spend on advertising, how much to get the word out. And it was always difficult to quantify how great the benefit, where are we getting bang for our buck? And given our going into a budget cycle, I would be in favor of us. I would be in favor of passing this now, but taking a closer look at. I hear what you said, Greg, about the need, but challenged myself, knowing this is just the looking at the, because of course, the first thing I saw was the price tag and was shocked, considering our budget challenges we're facing. So that's where I stand today on that. I would like some looking at what we quantify the benefit. That's, we have delivered water for 100 years without this. I get the part about things, a lot of stuff changing and a lot of fluidity in what we're doing. No pun intended with the fluid, but anyway, I'm sort of okay, hemming and hawing on this one.
Well, maybe I can answer that. I mean, I absolutely appreciate the nature where trying to balance the benefit with the cost. Some of the activities that we anticipate starting to bring forth to this committee starting next month, we weren't able to get it in time for this month. And I'm not quite sure why we haven't done it before, was to produce key performance indicators on some of our outreach, PR, marketing efforts for the district. So some of those are click-throughs on when we set up a social media campaign and how many people actually go to the website and find more information on the district. How we're bringing people to the district's websites and how many people are looking at the district's website, right? And what the growth rate is on that. Some of this stuff, Director Beerwagen, you're right, is a bit squishy and it's hard to put a quantitative measure on it. But I think, in the world of marketing and PR, a lot of it is qualitative, and we have to work within that sphere. I think some of the things, we've done a couple public surveys on how people feel about the district and what their general impression overall is. We would anticipate continuing some of that and building off some questions that we've done in the past and seeing where trend lines are going, to the point of the general budgetary concern, right? As we've spoken about before, there's roughly, beyond the staff salary and the work that staff does on a daily basis, we roughly have a $90,000 budget for communications overall. Now that entails help from consultants to help rebrand the district. We build some video marketing advertisements out of that. We do some paid advertising in certain places. We do other things. So there is a budget confined to the communication side of our district, and that's approved on an annual basis. And we operate within that confines. What this is another body in the space to help deliver our message. And to the extent that these KPIs, key performance indicators, can help quantify that cost benefit. You're right. For 100 years, we've been without this expense, for sure.
Yes. Do I sound like an old timer that says we did this without that in the past? We don't need it today.
Snowed, walked uphill both ways. I do understand that.
Okay.
So I kind of want to dig into this contract for services. Do we know, I mean, I'm sure you do know, but I would like to know, and maybe Director Beerwagen would like to know, like, what is that costing us, like, in the last 12 months? Well, has it been 12 months? I can't remember. Not quite.
I don't know.
Like, what is the monthly cost of that contract? And where I'm headed is, I tend to agree with Director Beerwagen. I'm not certain that we are using the folks that we have here to the best of what their ability may or may not be. And I'm looking at the budget, And I'm also knowing that we've got this contract sitting out there that I'm not certain we want to go forward with. When I read into the job description, there was a lot of these, a lot of these tasks and essential functions, and there was one other thing, tasks, essential functions, that I thought were not necessary. For instance, like, redo the website, right? Well, clearly that needs to be done. But I'm not sure either a PIO or a PIO assistant or whatever have the skills to do that. That is generally done by a web developer that sets up the framework, and then our people then feed in content, and it's structured in such a way that when we do a press release, it's automatically, uploaded or whatever. And so I kind of feel like there were some of these areas that could easily be handled on a short term, like the web developer is the best example, to do that. Then there was all this stuff about government relations, and my experience and thought about that is that is not a job for the PIO. I mean, the PIO to PIO, like using the Board of Supervisors, is that would be appropriate, but a position here would not then go to the Board of Supervisors. That would be our GM or a GM and a board member or something. So I'm not certain that that's an adequate or the correct job assignment. Because see, my problem with this last time was I hadn't really dived into this, and now I have. And then you talk about lobbying, and I think we pay Manazian a pretty hefty chunk to do some lobbying, and we've got other lobbyists. That's not a PIO function, I don't think. I think that's a separate function, and one in which that you have professional lobbying people to do that. So where I came away with was, gosh, I think this is not something I'm in favor of at this moment. I'm not against ever doing it, but for this budget cycle, I'm very concerned, and I'm really concerned about what we're paying out on this existing contract that I think truly was brought here for another reason. So I guess what I would ask is that staff, but now I know there's one, there's more than one, and maybe you, Greg, could kind of, just like Monica's doing, just kind of like, well, where can we make these adjustments? And I still think you've got a 35% differential between the position that's there and your proposed PIO. I just think the pieces aren't coming together for me. So if we can rework this and drop the money down and think about bringing the money down, because I think we will need outside help, especially like on the website. And my gosh, we really do need that website redone, in my opinion. And that's done within, 3 to 4 or 5 month job for an outside contractor. And they have a beginning, deliverables, a meeting, and an end. And then we then take over the content. So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't know. Chris?
I pretty much agree, and basically I'm really stuck on the getting more not stuck, but with the going forward with the budget, and really hesitant to until we can see what I think we're gonna be faced with a lot of budgetary holds or cuts to make the budget work in the coming year, and this is just the first one on our plate. So that's where I am going forward. Then discussing the merits, I think as we move forward we can do that. But I'm in the same camp with Ricky.
So I'm sorry, because I know this is something you have done a lot of work on, but I'm just not in a place where I feel like I can support this at this time. Sorry.
Okay. Well, so what I'm hearing then is we're gonna table this job posting, this job classification authorization.
Correct.
I will say that I wouldn't anticipate bringing this back anytime soon. I think the wage classification schedule on this is commensurate with, and at the very low end of other professionals in this in this type of work related to the region. So I think that irregardless of the rate and the cost, I wouldn't be supportive of moving the overall price tag for the wage schedule down until I see other sister agencies and regional agencies with a lower price tag for that professional work. So at this point, we'll table the discussion around this if that's the pleasure of this committee, and we'll bring it back at some other point in the future.
Okay. And then I'd like to have somebody, I guess it would be you, take a look at that external contract, because my understanding is that that's there's a lot of dollars per hour for that contract, and it'd be nice to just sort of look at the whole thing, right? It's like, do we need this expensive contract? Well, clearly we need some pieces of something, how can you take what's most necessary from this job description and make this work with the folks that we have? Anyway, I'm concerned about that contract outline there, so.
Do you want to see that?
Do we want to see it? Well, I'd like to see the cost. I don't need to see the contract itself, but I'd like to see what we're paying.
Sure. Yeah.
What about
My question is it open-ended? Is it month to month? What is it? Does it have a term? The contract?
So, Gianna, maybe you can help me with this one. This is the, so it's a.
I assume you're talking about our temporary
That's
PIO.
correct.
Yeah, it's a temporary,
Mike.
Put it on Mike, please.
I'm sorry. It's a temporary appointment at this point right now, a temporary assignment.
What does that
So we
mean, though, in
say
terms of
contract.
Or is
So
it a
you're
contract?
thinking it as a
Yeah,
vendor
it's a
independent
contract.
contractor.
Oh,
It's
okay.
a temporary assignment that we contract somebody for, or
I
offer
see.
somebody and
Okay.
appoint them to.
So it
so
is
there's
open-ended in that sense?
No, we can elongate it, or cut it, I guess, at any time as a temporary assignment. But it did have a particular value to it, or that we can calculate.
Yeah, so it was like a 6-month period, and then we extended it a few more months, right? And so what you want to know is how much we've spent
Yes.
in 2020, right?
Yes.
And then what were the tasks that were accomplished under that? In other words, measure out, like Chris started out talking about cost benefit. So, I want to know how much was spent and what was done under that agreement. And then we can then better weigh, the cost benefit, I guess. Is that right? Would that be true, Chris?
Yes, I would be curious because I can't compare the proposed salary with not knowing how much is this person costing us per month, or per month, I guess would be a way to look at it. And I like I'm going to learn how to say key performance indicators rather than cost benefit ratio.
Key performance indicators. Yeah, I think we are definitely tabling, and then I'm asking for further information at perhaps another meeting to
Yes.
understand that contract, because I don't know that we want to continue it, or maybe we do, I don't know.
I agree. Okay.
I will bring that back with some information
That'd be great.
around what this individual currently in this agreement is doing.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Some of the activities that they're presenting
Okay.
and putting forth.
Wonderful.
Good. Thank you.
Is there any public comment on this item? Star 9, raise your hand.
Yes, sir.
Okay. We will close item number 3 and open item number 5.
Okey dokey.
Revision to section 14, encroachments.
And these were, by and large, Sid Brown's edits to our original one, is that right?
Verbatim, these were Sid Brown's edits.
Thank you, Sid, if you're around.
Yes.
Good job. Good job, Sid.
I'm sorry, Tanya, but if I can interact, we felt that it was applicable to bring it back to this committee as opposed to the board overall.
Yeah.
Because the comments, although Tanya will tell you, are not 100% all substantive, There was enough red line that if we presented it to the full board in an open
Yeah.
session, we'd be very confused.
I think you did good
All right.
in doing it this way.
Go ahead.
Correct. So just to extend on what Greg was saying, we looked at section 15 again. We looked at this comments that she provided, and we really changed, our attempt was to change the tone of section 15 to match the rest of the tone of the other sections. So we removed the familiarity of the content, or at least that was our goal when we were doing the revisions. So the red lines here, in general, they change, you out to recreation staff, or management, recreation staff, or to campers, and really specify the audience that we're.
Right, I think those were good changes. It made it more clear.
So some of the other items that we considered was just the overall explaining whether it was rules or regulations. I do want to address a couple of the comments that you made that we actually did not incorporate.
Okay.
One of it, she made a comment with regards to, in the beginning of the document, with regards to providing phone numbers for 911 and the particular campground. So we did not include that in the beginning of the document, that there is phone numbers for the particular campgrounds within the document for cancellation. The thought with that is when you check into whatever campground that you're at, the 911 and then the campground phone number is available there at the area.
Right, that makes sense.
The other comment that we did not incorporate was adding the word animals to the respective property grounds and amenities.
Can you tell me what section you're looking at?
Yes, it's 150102.
Okay, respect. There was an animal?
She added the word, she suggested adding the word animals, and we did not add the word animals. And the reason for that is actually, it's against state law to harass wildlife. So,
Oh, okay, I'm with you
yeah.
now, all right.
So we
I was
didn't feel it
thinking
was
someone's dog.
required. No. Wildlife.
Oh, right, okay.
She had a comment with regards to licensed vehicles. That's the next section under motorized vehicles. I just wanted to address that, being as the district doesn't have any trails that are constructed or maintained for off-highway vehicles. So we didn't adjust that section there.
So is that there was a comment on vehicles must be licensed?
Yeah.
And the comment, it wasn't it's a,
Her
does
question,
everybody have to have a license to be on an NID property?
her question was, is the intent to permit only street vehicles, legal
Mhm.
vehicles?
Well, and isn't the intent, we don't allow motorized vehicles on any of our trails or?
Correct. Yeah, so we didn't feel it was necessary to adjust that section.
Do we want to add at the end of that, no motorized vehicles are allowed on, well, then you said trails or?
We only have one trail.
Yeah, that's right, okay. All right, I'm cool with that.
Okay. Okay, so,
Those were the two.
yeah, those were the comments that we didn't incorporate. Did you want to go through the red line by line, or are you satisfied with?
Well, I'm fine with it. I asked Director Beerwagen kind of what he.
I'm fine with it. Looks good.
Now, prior to this meeting getting started, I had a question, and it was floating around in my head here, but I noticed that there was no prohibition on smoking in our campground. And I asked Monica about that, and Greg, well, maybe you can say what you thing. But it seems like that's a natural, we should say, smoking is prohibited. Not everybody will behave. But if we say it's prohibited, I mean, it's a campground, you know, you don't want to have people putting their cigs on the ground and lighting up a, whatever, pine needle or something.
Well, that's a little outside of this conversation, but, you know, if it was something that, you know, I think it was the board that addressed the sale of alcohol.
Yes.
And at some point, the whole board made the determination that alcohol would not be sold at the campgrounds. There was no prohibition against alcohol. I would think that if we wanted to bring an item to add to this that would be along the lines of smoking, I don't know how.
I don't know.
Something you want.
Chris, what do you think about that? I mean, I'm just curious.
I generally am in favor of smoking outside, not indoors. So I don't have a problem with smoking in a campground.
Okay. I just was thinking of fire hazard that.
Not from the smoke, but from the fire hazard standpoint.
Yeah, from the yeah, exactly. It's like sometimes people are not responsible with how they put their cigarettes out or where they place the cigarette butts or whatever.
From that perspective, we do follow the Forest Service guidelines when they ban campfires, for instance. We ban campfires at the time. Right? I don't know if it's something you want to talk about at the same time. If you ban a campfire, you ban any flame, because I know there's a ban on charcoal, there's a ban on, and it's specifically around fire mitigation, right?
Right,
Fire
well, that was
suppression.
more of what I was thinking about. I wasn't thinking of secondhand smoke. I was thinking about fire risk.
I thought you were thinking of secondhand smoke.
No, it was all about fire.
I'm not sure if when we ban campfires and charcoal fires, et cetera, and only permit maybe propane heat during August, September, whenever it's hot. We could bring that back and for discussion, I suppose. I don't know if it's.
Well, all I said, you know, this was just floating around, and I just thought, we don't ban smoking
Do we know?
in campgrounds. That's interesting.
Do you know any other entity that bans smoking?
Good question.
In
I
campgrounds?
don't know. So if it's not consistent with like Forest Service regs or
Yeah.
anything.
We might want to check in and just see if there's any prerequisite for that or anybody doing that, and then we can bring that back as just a follow-up item.
I would be, yeah. Well, I'm interested.
Did Monica leave?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we can come back with maybe some wildfire-related mitigation activities that the state parks, the Forest Service, other utilities do for PG&E on their campgrounds. Like, what is the standard practice?
Right.
Right.
We want to be
And
consistent.
see if we can be consisent with that.
Yeah, I think that's a good plan. I mean, I don't want to, be a pain, but at the same time, we all want to mitigate fire as much as possible. And a lot of times, fires are caused by people putting out their cigarettes or thinking they're out and they're not, and so on. And I understand that if we were to say, no smoking, that there will be people that will, no matter what.
So specific around wildfire mitigation.
Wildfire mitigation,
Do some research.
cigarettes, yeah.
Well,
Or
I mean, at that
smoking.
point, let's pull in campfires. No,
Well, Chris asked if she was here. I didn't know she was still here.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Monica is here. She just appeared.
She just appeared? No, just ask her if she has any input on that or
Yeah,
experience,
Monica,
if she knows anything about the Forest Service.
so let me see if I can paraphrase our question for Monica as she's just walked back in. During high fire season, we follow the Forest Service guidelines when they say no campfires.
Exactly.
We stop campfires. So do you know of any other entity, state parks, Forest Service, other PG&E, other campgrounds in the region that would put out a no campfires, right? At the same time, I'm pretty sure they do no charcoal fires, right? So only contain butane or
Yeah, the
propane
little
is fine.
stove.
Yeah. Do you know if any of those regulations also include no cigarette smoking during that period of time?
I haven't seen any of that before. I mean, well, in my 4 years doing this, that I haven't seen that. They typically, it's just no campfires, or charcoal fires.
Could we bring just a research topic back to this committee and say, looking at the breadth of the different agencies,
Yeah.
we've identified that when fire season is at a particular level, these agencies, induce, no campfires, charcoal burn ban, and then have a line for, cigarettes. Are there anybody talking about no cigarette smoke?
Yeah, I'm just interested to know.
See if
Yeah.
It's fire mitigation, not about
Exactly.
secondhand smoke.
Exactly. No, totally.
More health.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm just interested. So Chris, did you have a question for Monica?
No, she answered it perfectly. Thank you,
Okay.
Thank you for coming back, Monica.
Welcome. I was just in the parking lot doing business.
Okay, all right, thank
Okay.
you. So, yeah, but anyway, in general, I'm fine with all these regulations and the
Yes.
changes. And that was just my one question, so I appreciate you, Monica, looking into that, that's great.
And same here.
Okay,
Okay, so if we're thumbs up on this,
Yes.
then no public comment? Public comment time? *9 to raise your hand. Okay, so seeing no public comment, we'll bring this to the next board meeting as a consent item.
great,
You okay with that?
yep,
Great.
sounds fine, thank you.
Okay.
Good.
We'll close, that item and open item number 6, Table Meadows, DFWE, LE. Line.
Yeah, we'll let,
Shannon.
Shannon go ahead and start this discussion.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Business service technician. So our Table Meadows Road, Phase 2 District Finance Waterline extension has begun. The project as it's been designed is ready to serve 45 of the identified parcels. When we executed funding agreements, we had 22 funding agreements executed. We've since awarded the contract to Tykert, and a notice to proceed has been issued on May 11th. For that policy, or regulation, it does say that once the notice to proceed has been issued, no additional funding agreements would be accepted by any of the property owners, which does not preclude them to get water service in the future. All of the 45 properties can get water service. However, they just don't have the ability to take advantage of the funding under the funding agreement. So since that notice to proceed has been issued, we have received 4 different contacts from property owners. And I kind of summarized when they contacted me, how they contacted me. And so the suggestion was to bring this item to the committee to see if there's any entertainment in allowing them to execute a funding agreement. And I've also summarized the difference between the funding agreement highlights of how they can finance the term, things like that, versus the term payment section of our regulation that allows them to finance still a certain amount, obviously under different terms at any time in the future. So with that, I will take any questions.
And just, clarification, a couple of them did talk to Director Miller, and Director Miller was the one that recommended that we bring this to APC, because staff doesn't have the ability to make changes to the policy. So that's why we're here today.
So can you give us a little background on the why of the policy about funding agreements? I'm pretty fuzzy about this whole process. So if I get this right, they can buy in later on after the project's done, but they can't join now once it's been started.
Right, so the whole reason to have thresholds and this
deadline to accept funding agreements is so that the project would actually be successful. It does require a good faith deposit to come in and a commitment to actually start the project. We require 50% before we even start design. So if everyone was kind of waiting for everybody else to put their money down, then we may never get the 50% and therefore never actually get started.
I see. So it's an incentive, the date, the hard date is an incentive to get everybody
Well,
to participate who wants to.
it doesn't preclude people from participating because obviously we need the 50% prior to the contract being awarded. If that gives a little bit more of a buffer, but it does create a deadline so that we can actually get started with construction. It doesn't delay the construction from happening, because if we kept waiting for more agreement to come in, then we may never get that ball rolling. But no, it does not preclude them from joining later.
But if they join later, they're under the term payment of 10 years as opposed to the 30 years. And so the terms are better if they join up right in the
There's more incentive to participate in this program.
Right.
Because they can finance more over a longer period of time.
Right.
Did that answer your question, Chris?
Yes, thank you.
So on this map that you gave us, could you identify the 4 property owners that are wanting the service?
Yes. Okay.
You know, I think it's also important to identify that of the 4, and Shannon, correct me if I'm wrong, there's only one that's a new property owner that was in escrow at the
Yeah,
time
I
that
read
this was
that.
happening, right? So the other ones had been involved in the process before, whereas the one was coming in at the last minute, truly as an unaware property owner.
So on that map, Ricky, there's the yellow highlighter.
Oh, thank you.
You can send that to Chris later. I can share that.
So we've got this person. I'm just gonna mark these on my little map. This person. And then
Director Bierwagen, we can send you what she's looking at after the meeting.
Pardon me?
I'm wondering if you could hold it up for him? It
I don't
won't work,
think we
huh?
can.
Kind of hard.
Well, I thought it was a disclosure thing. Are we not late enough?
Oh,
I can't hear what Chris said.
There was a question as to who are the 4 property owners that are on the staff report that were coming in late, and Director Heck just wanted to know where they sat in amongst the map that's in the staff report.
right.
Yes.
And
I got
now
that.
I know. I see them now. So, I mean, they're not like it's, well,
Substantive.
so, you know, my sense about this, I'll just say, is that I think if we can accommodate them, we should, on the DFWLE. Because I think, you know, getting clean, reliable water out to folks is one of the core missions. So I would be in favor of, for those 4, saying, okay, you guys can come in and that's it. I mean, I know you have to draw the line somewhere, right?
Yep.
He did say that 3 of them were aware of this policy and this deadline before this happened, right? And the fourth one is in escrow, so that I would be in favor of a variance for the 4th one, but the first 3, you know, obviously we bring people in, but do we? I guess I'm assuming this is an application for variance or something along those lines, policy.
Right, so for clarification, there is one new owner. The 3 others, all the information had been mailed to them. However, one of those 3 claimed never to receive any of the information.
Okay.
So there is that. I can't prove that they received the
Right.
information.
No, I understand.
I was contacted by them.
But the opportunity's been there. And how long has this project been proposed? How long have these people been? Years, right?
This particular project's been in motion for about maybe 9 months.
Actually, going forward, yeah, but it's been on the radar for a long time.
Well, that's a good question. So when your notices went out till today, like, how much time has that been? Has that been 2 years or 9 months or approximately?
I believe we kicked this project off summer of last year.
Yeah, so it's been just about 12 months or maybe
10
a
months
little
to
longer.
12 years.
So it hasn't been years and years. Well, I'm definitely in favor of the person who is in escrow and didn't have any way to know to be able to be allowed. And frankly, I think having these other three would be fine too. But Director Beerwagen feels differently, so perhaps we have to split.
Well, I'm waffling at this point.
Oh, you're waffling. Okay.
Waffling because it's advantageous to bring them all in, right?
That's right. I know it is right.
All right. So does this require some kind of variance to deviate from policy? That's why it's a committee and goes to the board?
Do they have a requirement, like these other four folks, do they have the money to do a 50% good faith deposit?
50%?
Isn't that what you said, 50%?
10%.
Oh, 10%, thank you. I was thinking, wow, 50% is a lot. Okay.
They're all aware of the term.
They're all aware of the terms.
Right.
So it could be that someone doesn't have the cash, and they say, well, I'll just have to wait. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay.
At what level of cost, I'm curious at this point, with the engineering done, would an additional 4 come into the system, the district cost?
Done. We go ahead and install the service laterals and the boxes for all 45 parcels or 44 parcels, whatever it is. So that's all done. That's part of the contract. That's just the part that the district pays for in advance and waits until the customer comes and connects.
So it's variance to the policy.
To the policy.
Yeah, to the policy. There'd be no additional construction costs related to having
Good
this
question,
board.
Greg, but good answer.
I'm in favor.
So the only other question perhaps to discuss is, Director Heck, you had mentioned just these 4 and no more.
What happens
What
when we get a
happens
question
when
next
we get a
week?
question tomorrow or next week?
Well,
Or do we afford the opportunity to send a notice back out to all these folks?
I think
don't
so.
know.
I think you send it out. I mean, because some people wait because they don't have money, some people wait because they're otherwise involved in COVID or whatever, health crisis or whatever they might be going on. And it seems like it would be fair to send out another notice and say, you know, the board or the committee has extended the time to some date.
It can, other than the ones that did sign up in advance, put their good faith deposit down quite a while ago, and they've been out of pocket waiting for the project to develop. These folks will be out of pocket when they can immediately connect up.
Right,
That's the
but
difference, so.
I guess what I'm wondering is how material is an extra 2 weeks or 30 days or something?
Well, it is, and that's the purpose of the policy, is to make sure that we're not waiting for the 50% to hit our trigger moment until, people can kind of trickle in whenever they feel like it, and then all of a sudden there's the project going and say, oh yeah, now I want to jump on. It somewhat defeats the purpose of some policy and some early adopters, right, getting on board and being able to say, yes, no, I want this and I'm going to commit, and some others kind of trickling. Now, granted, there's the one who was in escrow, they generally didn't know anything about it, to say, well, I'm just going to wait until NID says they're going to do it, they put in the time and the energy and the cost to do the engineering piece, my lateral is going to be right outside, and then I'm going to try to get in there before it's too much money, because it's just more money for them later on. If I understand, the purpose of the policy was to bring in the early adopters first and get everybody to consent to the project.
There's definitely a threshold to get the project moving and going. Now, the deadline for the notice to proceed to the contractor was chosen to have a point in the process where we were done accepting funding agreements.
What was that date?
I suppose, notice to proceed
Uh-huh.
to,
Like the final notice?
May 11th.
May 11th.
May 11th, okay.
So I suppose the other option, if you want that buffer to be more advantageous to the property owners,
Mm-hmm.
you could entertain moving that to a notice of completion or at some other point in the process. But, I mean, at a certain point, you have people who are seeing activity out there and maybe get intrigued by getting water or changes to their family life or whatever, calling us.
Uh-huh. And what's
but at
wrong
some
with
point-
that? If we get early adoption up to 50%, and then you get another, whatever, 20% that want to come in after the 50%, why
They're
is
getting the
that?
benefit, they're getting the benefit later on in time than those that got the early adoption early, like Doug said.
In what way? I mean,
Those folks who gave us the 10% deposit were months ago.
right, but not more than, what was the first deposit? I mean, I'm trying to get time and scale here, like how big of a problem is this or is it even a problem? How fair is it or how unfair is it,
I think the bigger concern would be getting to a threshold that allows a project to move forward.
Right, and that's always been 50%.
And that's by allowing them to wait until notice of completion.
Well, I don't think that's what we're
Makes it more onerous
saying.
to get to 50% to start the project.
Yeah, I think we're saying, look, hey,
If I know-
44 parcels, we have to have 50% or we're not gonna go forward.
Right.
You will get a certain amount.
You have to have enough neighborhood cooperation to
Right,
get
you
that
have to get
project
it.
moving forward.
Then, once you get the 50%, then you say, okay, so if anybody else wants to come in, what is another trigger point besides?
Well, she talked about notice of completion, which is when the project's completed, the construction component is done.
Isn't there something between where you are now and notice of completion?
Not many. There's
Not really.
not really, because once you have funding agreements, that's when, design happens and it goes out to bid and then the contract's awarded and then notice to proceed. Now the contractor's out there and until they're finished,
I see.
then there's
I guess
contract.
I'm scratching my head because I don't understand.
I guess you're,
It feels punitive in some way, or not punitive, but it feels like, well, you didn't get in here, so too bad for you. It's like, well, wait, we're talking about human right to water. I mean, it seems like we want as many people to come in to that as we can.
and they do. I mean, they have the ability to connect, so it's just really the amount of the financing in order to get the connection that we're talking about, right? And so what we're doing by extending that out is you're just putting more onus on the folks that are willing to pay early and have their money sitting for 6 months or 8 months or whatever the time frame is in their deposit before the project starts and gets done. So maybe they're out 8 months, 10 months before they actually get water service. So they paid their deposit up front. Somebody else could come in and put that deposit down and get water service in 2 weeks. That's the difference, right? That's the difference of somebody putting money out of pocket. It's still the same amount of money. I get that part.
Yeah.
That part isn't changing, other than I'm having to put my money first in order to make sure that this project gets done, and then these folks will just wait until the last minute to write the check. That's really what the...
So, let me ask this, in having more connections, you're spreading our costs over a greater number of people, is that correct? No.
Because the policy already
Because
spread.
we're
We already
doing
spread it
90%.
over,
Yeah.
we already spread 100% of the construction over the 45 parcels.
Oh,
It doesn't change the per parcel.
No.
oh, it does,
amount at all.
okay.
But what's the financing structure on that? You said
It's a 90-10. It's 90% finance, 10% down.
and is there a timeline from the notice of completion to when that money has to be repaid?
30 years.
Yeah,
30
30 years,
right.
yeah,
If you do it ahead of time, if you signed up before as part of the original.
right,
You do
right.
it ahead of time.
It's an advantageous,
It's
I
a better rate.
remember when the board made this change a couple of years ago.
Your rate's lower
Correct.
on a longer period of time, and then
Right,
but later
so it makes
you
it
are-
more affordable for those folks who need the water. And I think if someone wants to come in, they should be able to come in. I mean, that's right.
Well, again, they can come in, right? We need to make sure that we clarify that everybody can connect. It's just how much the district
How they pay for it.
finances, how they pay for it.
Exactly.
That's the component.
So what is the harm? What is the harm in letting letting in those people and us financing it after the cutoff, or whatever. I mean, how is the district harmed?
We're not harmed.
We're not harmed. That's what I was heading for. I
What
didn't think we
Doug's
were
point,
harmed.
what Doug's point is, maybe the initial 50% or whoever has participated to get the project going, they may feel, different about.
Having to put money out up front.
No, I put out $250 on my deposit for broadband 3 years ago. I'm not joking, and I might get it in the next 60 days. So, I mean, it is kind of like infrastructure improvements take a while. So I don't know that if I put out my deposit in last October and someone else gets to put their deposit up in June or July, it's like, what do I care? You know, we want the neighborhood served. It helps everybody. Anyhow, that's kind of how I feel. So, Chris,
I come back to the development of the policy originally. There's a reason why this policy exists, and went through probably a lengthy discussion process to get the policy. So I'm sort of going, okay, now I'm back to, for the integrity of the policy, to say, okay, the guy that's in escrow obviously has a different situation than the three others. So I don't know. Now I flip-flopped. But there had to be precedent for a policy, for this definitive policy.
And it was to make folks, to get to the 50% threshold, right?
Yes.
You have, to get a project to move forward, there's incentive to get on board now and get that to move forward.
Sure.
If everybody can wait until the water line's installed, they would wait until the water line's
But
installed.
we would not install the water
We would
line.
never get to that
We
point.
would never get there. I guess that's my point, is it doesn't, we're not gonna, turn a shovel full of dirt until we get 50%.
50%, correct.
So,
But that's where the intent of having some cutoff date was to dangle a carrot, for lack of a better term, for the folks to come on board and be signed up for this project.
right.
But the time between the 50% and the notice to proceed is
Yeah, that's a little,
basically whether it's 3 months or 6 months.
yeah.
You're saying that that's not important.
Well, I'm just saying it's not material.
Because the 50% is more important.
The 50%
That's a more important deadline.
That is the more important deadline. If we don't get 50% by X date, then sorry, folks, we're not doing it.
Right.
But if we get to 50%, hooray. And yes, and the rest of you, or whoever has the money and whoever or whatever that can come in, can do that. I'm still in favor of allowing these four, but.
So then that would beg another question of going back and looking at the policy again, right, to see if we need to make those adjustments. Because this is is this a one-time deal, or is this a next water line extension that goes out?
Well,
Are we in the same boat?
It's sort of like, I think of it like, I don't know, setback requirements, right, in the county. You're building something, and there's a requirement that you must be so far from property lines or whatever. But there are instances where you can go, yeah, we can grant a variance for that, or we see that your set of circumstances is different, or whatever, and those can be granted. And so it's not like you have to say, oh, we're gonna, do away with our setback requirements. It's that we have to look at these individually. And that's sort of the way I see this. I agree, the policy is important, we want to set a date, get those 50%. And then after that, if people want to come in, this guy, whatever, somebody said they didn't hear, and this guy was in escrow, and how can you draw the line and say, you get to come in, but you don't? It just doesn't, I kind of like to err on the side of fairness and inclusion, and bring these folks in. It's to our benefit, to the district's long-term benefit, to have these folks there. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, so at this point, does this still have to go to the full board for a variance, or is this a what do you call it?
A variance.
An ABC decision, or does it go to the board? If,
Yeah,
like,
does it-
like we're on different
If you guys
camps,
are on different camps, we'll
it
take
goes to the board, I think.
Most of it. Okay, that's what I'd be in favor of, because it's
Yeah,
an important issue.
it is. It's the same.
And I think that would be good.
Yeah. I agree. So she goes,
So do we have a recommendation or a split? I mean, I split.
I think you say
in favor of all four.
yeah, I think it's a
Sounds like
split.
Dr. Bill was only in favor
And then in
of
the staff
one.
report, I think you should identify, our different perspectives so that the board
Yes.
has the benefit of that.
My question
Yes.
to you is, you were curious on the location of the people requesting. Do you believe that's important information to?
I'm a real estate person, so I'm always interested in what parcel does what. And,
Would you like them identified on the map for?
I think that the board would like that.
I
Because
didn't-
part of what where my head was besides the real estate connection is, well, what if these other four are sort of outliers? That would, to me,
Yeah, they wouldn't have been eligible
They-
for
have
service.
some weight in some
Right.
way or another. Or if they were all contiguous, or, I don't know. It's just, I like knowing where the parcels are. And if we're not violating any confidentiality.
I'll just do them by shading. I
Okay,
won't-
that's great. I think that's what we should do.
I have a question that I don't know if it was answered or if I'm just don't know. When the financing starts on the 90%, does that start the time that they sign up as the 50%? It
No,
starts at notice of completion?
no.
Not even that.
It actually does not start until after we reconcile the project.
It's a couple months
So,
after
Yeah.
of notice of completion, because it's got to go through finance and get all the numbers
Okay.
Yeah.
reconciled before we come up with a final
So
number.
at that point, so all of this 50%, if we went the way that the four, they would be included, 50% plus these four, would be under the same term.
Mhm.
If somebody came in 3 months after and the project was done, everybody's turning on their water, and they said, yeah, I really want that, then their finance package is more costly. Is that right? It costs more for that
Yes.
90%, because their time frame is.
They can't
No. They can't do 90%.
Right.
So if someone waits till after the project's complete and they request a meter to be
They
installed,
they pay the.
they can finance up to $20,000
Up to 10 years.
over 10 years.
The term.
So
Right.
they need to sign the term
Got it.
payment and then put the balance as a down.
Yeah.
So they're
Yeah.
more out of pocket and
Okay.
a smaller financed over less time. And that starts immediately.
And the lower rate.
Okay, all right, I just,
Yeah, no, I thought that was a good question. So
these four would be stay.
maybe the actual cutoff is, like you say, the notice of completion, and that's for the board to decide. I don't know. Okay, I think, do we have direction? I think we do. Chris?
Yeah, do we have direction after all that?
Well, we'll bring this to
To the board.
the board, in open session for discussion,
Yes.
However,
without a recommendation from AP.
but I want to see if we can carve out this one parcel, or Chris, see if you agree, for the guy who was in escrow and didn't know. I mean, can we agree that he should, no matter what, be able to come in, or do we want that to also be a board action?
What do you think? Did you say
I think
you want
be able
to
to-
carve him out? Then I would say yes to that one.
Okay, so I think that guy, so that you can give him an answer. Yeah, you can come in.
We can't give them the APC doesn't have, does the APC have the authority to modify a policy?
Amend and modify the policy?
If they do, then clearly we could, but that's a question I don't know the answer.
You know what?
No.
Okay, then I would reach out to this gentleman, Mr. Smith, and tell him that the committee reviewed everything, and our inclination was to support that, but it's got to go for the full board, and encourage him to come in to the
Yeah.
board meeting.
We can't amend a policy here. We gotta
Right.
amend that at the board level.
Right. So we're not going to amend the policy, but can we call the guy and say,
What we,
well, whose division? Oh, this is Scott Miller's division, so maybe Scott should call him.
Are we requesting an amendment to the policy?
No, so
No.
I was just gonna bring that up,
For
Chris.
variance.
So the question with what the APC has authority to, can they approve a variance of a policy? Not actually changing the policy, which is
That's
a
a good
different
question.
mechanism than just making a variance to an existing policy. Again, I think that's a question.
Mhm. lack of that answer, I don't know it either. So
Yeah.
I think we'll take it to the full board
I think
for
we
a
would take
variance
it.
or an amendment.
And we'll find out,
And we'll find out from legal and figure that out. I don't know that answer.
And we'll contact all of the property owners in question to let them know that this is going to the board.
Yeah, right, so that they know they can come and.
And I typically always extend that they can attend a public meeting, and that's why, Mr. Smith wrote the email for
Mhm.
your, review.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't attend today, you know,
Right,
but I always extend that to any property owner that's involved in a subject.
okay, great. So we have a split decision, we'll go to the board.
Yeah.
There we go.
We didn't have public comment?
Oh, do we,
I know, there
do
might
we
be
have
somebody
public
there.
comment out there? Star 9, to raise your hand. All right, seeing none, we'll close item 6.
Okay, thank you.
We'll open up the last item, item number 7.
Thanks, Shannon. Thanks, Doug.
Yep. Item number 7, this is a snapshot of monthly safety activities from May 27th to the 30th of June. Done a couple site visits. One, there was a East Main Street water main break that, I don't know if you heard about. That was a middle of the night or late afternoon, I can't recall, but, they had to get in some deep holes. So our safety department had to go and make sure that all our confined space activities are being monitored and done right. We went up with the hydro division and looked at the Bear Valley tunnel inspection. I don't know what came out of that, but anyway, just when we go into some of these confined space areas, district staff organizes with the safety department so that they're there to ensure that all the training that we give everyone on an annual basis is followed and appropriately documented as we move forward. So it's just our two-part sort of insurance policy and make sure that we're doing everything right. Done a number of training courses over the last 30 days or so. Here you see confined space. We've had some new hires in maintenance and accounting. The rec has brought on 5 folks as we started gearing up towards July 1. Monica and crew have been going full steam there. The forklift, confined space, fall protection, all of these are under the current practices of COVID. So normally we would have a much larger set of employees come in and do a forklift training or confined space, maybe 20 at a time. We're confining those to I think we've got 6 total in the annex that can do classroom material, and then we spread them out and go up to the machines, spray them down. So what normally was a very small, not small, but maybe 4-hour window of training, it's a 8-hour window of training because we're having to train on the same material, the same piece of equipment. We're having to keep people spread out in the classroom space. When we go onto a forklift or a machine, one person gets on it, the trainer trains them what to do, spray it down.
Right.
Next person comes up, they spray it down. So it just takes time.
Yeah.
Anyway, we figured out a great way to continue doing that, and it slowed the training material down a little bit, but we're in line and moving forward with a lot of that. And I guess just general administrative activities they're working on. You know, they were doing a lot with the insurance over the last month and kind of coordinating with that group as well, as you well know. Working on, within this period was the mandated face mask. We kind of went into a bit more of a lockdown scenario with the district, and so we've been installing 6-foot spacing, and so just re-upping our thought process so we don't forget, right? You know, we're not as a restaurant, you know, you come in and you always have to remind patrons every time. Everybody's new, you know, and as we come into our offices and our buildings daily, you sometimes forget. And so our safety department's been reminding folks and bringing those best practices forward. So that's, any questions for that?
Was I had a question, was the tunnel inspection done on the South Yuba Canal?
You know what, I don't know where that was, Bear Valley Tunnel. It must be, yeah, it must be, but I don't know if it's the main one that comes down from Milton to to Spalding or not.
Okay, I was just curious. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, and then following up on, Chris, I had a similar question. So they did an inspection, so do we know the results of the inspection?
Well, I said I don't know what the results came of it
Oh, you
yet.
don't?
But I can, I'll
It
see
was
what
just interesting
they are.
to know, you know, it's like, what
Well,
do
these
we
are,
have to do? Or nothing, maybe we don't have to do it.
well, these are part of our, ongoing agreement that we've had with PG&E in order to make sure that when we agreed to purchase the South Yuba Canal System as well as Deer Creek, that it's in equal, comparable shape, right?
Right.
So that period of time that goes by. So we've been contracting with PG&E and their contractors to go out with them and inspect these assets. That's, I don't know for certain, but I'm
You think
assuming
that's
that's
part
what
of that?
is part of it.
Oh, okay.
And the, you know, part of it is, what the outcome of it was, I haven't heard, but, you know, it's just to make sure that it's in equitable repair and maintenance as it was on the day that we decided to purchase it. If there was any, I'll guarantee you, if there was any structural errors or inconsistencies with these inspections, I'm sure the board will know and I will know.
You will know,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
You're welcome. Yeah, we did.
No, I think he called for it, and there was,
No, I think I forgot.
Retaining the agenda.
So we can, that's fine, we did. And, so any other questions or public comment on this item? Darn
No.
it. Okay. Well, that concludes the APC meeting for today.
thank you.
Thank you all
Thank
very
you,
much.
everybody. Thank you.
Have a great day.
I intend to.
Hi, guys.